Appreciate it. Outstanding. Now, number one, I love coming to aviation events and full of aviation professionals like yourself. Flight instruction has always been very near and dear to my heart. I wasn't on a normal path through the Army. I was a commissioned guy, so I had to do it on the side. I ended up doing my CFI check ride. It was kind of some of the rides that people were talking about today, the different stories out there. Thanks. The different stories out there of check rides. And mine was one where the Robinson R-22, so my day job was Army Special Operations. I'm flying the MH-47 Chinook. It's got two 4,000 horsepower engines and flies at 54,000 pounds. On the weekends, I was going to St. Louis to take my CFI training in an R-22. Talk about a little bit of a difference. And when I went to do the check ride, of course, the FAA, this is 2001, right before 9/11 actually. And so the FAA wasn't quite qualified to do those check rides, so we had a designee who was becoming a DPE. No, we had an ASI who's about to get his check ride, got his 50 hours in the R-22. He's giving the DPE a check ride, who's making him a DPE, and I'm there for my CFI check ride. So it was one of those triple, hey, we're going to get a lot accomplished this day. Not too bad, except for the long oral. It ended up being a 2-day check ride, and then I knew when I'm going out to do auto rotations the next day, and we were doing touchdown auto rotations at the time with the FAA, that he had just got his 50th hour in the R-22, and I was pretty sure that I was going to not let him touch the controls, let alone rely on him to save the day. So that's how I started in the CFI world. But I got to thank Jerry and Charlie and Todd. We go back a long ways with Redbird. My reincarnation, is Everett still in the house from FAA? I don't see Everett. 810, Group 810. So as Bob Hepp said, in 2006, I went out there to Leesburg, and I was looking for a CFI job. And the reason for that was because I thought I wanted to retire from the Army and be a designated pilot examiner. So I went out there and I met Bob and started flying with his school because I had evaluated all the schools in the area. And Bob does have a lot of the stuff that was talked about by Charlie Precourt. You have to have instructors that actually like what they're doing. And it was pretty clear that Bob's group out there really liked what they were doing. They had the Redbird that they were certainly working with, and everything was there about the student. It was about learning the student. What are his needs? What are the differences in the students that showed up? So I really did learn a lot with Bob. And when I went in and put my application in for the FAA instead of being a DPE, the story goes that I was still in active duty Army. I had deployed to Iraq. I came back and I had some expired paperwork from the FAA saying that there was an opening for an ASI position. And so over the weekend I studied up to see what an ASI was, and I said, well, an ASI is the DPE's boss. So if I wanted to be a DPE, sure, I can be the DPE's boss. And my job, I've always been trying to move to a position to influence things, and people that have dealt with me kind of understand that, to include the folks in the FAA. Because I was one of those people in the FAA, and I'm glad to take some FAA questions, because the position I did get to was the Deputy Associate Administrator for Aviation Safety. So that's the number 2 guy in the safety lane. And then when I moved back down, because that was an acting job, and as you've read in the news over the last 2 to 3 years, the FAA loves having actors. So imagine this, Jim Viola gets promoted 5 steps up above his boss, and then they tell me fix stuff. Oh yeah, I got to worry about these 5 people that work for me, that I may go back underneath them, and I could really have action to that. So I'm really glad that they chose some people and they put the people in a position permanently, because therefore you can hold people accountable. Through some of the shutdowns, I went through 2 shutdowns as an executive in the FAA, and trying to hold FSDO managers accountable for doing the work that they're supposed to do. Trying to have a dashboard that actually tracks it. So I'm just going to talk about the FAA for a minute. But there's still stuff we need to do in government to fix some of that. And now, as an industry leader, when I had the opportunity in 2000, it was actually the end of 2019, the decision I made when I interviewed and got the job for HAI at the time, now VAI, was where can I have the best impact on safety? And I've kind of used that and be glad to talk and tell stories of that all through my career, is where can you best influence safety and how can you educate the future workforce? Those are common themes over the last 2 days. And so I still apply to try to do that type things. And one of the things I want to take away, you guys, everybody in the audience take away is, james.viola@rotary.org is my email, or president@vai.org. My staff doesn't like me coming to these meetings because they're kind of ground roots versus strategic type stuff. But I want to be the person you call if you have any questions. Email me on any helicopter or vertical aviation issue, and I'll be that guy that passes around and links you up and keeps things going. And that's the other reason to come to these type of events. And I really love, Jerry and Charlie and Todd put these together. I mean, brings us all together as a community, and you get to meet people, you get to put people's faces on phone calls and other things that we're trying to do, and it actually helps the whole industry grow. And the flight training industry, you have some great leaders out there, and I certainly love, Mark Baker and Pete Bunce was supposed to be on here today, Ed Bolin. I mean, we work all together in that faraway land that Jens was talking about in DC, and it's really good to get out here and see what's happening in the real world. So those are some of the key takeaways, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you kind of a state of the industry for vertical aviation, and I'm going to play a nice video at the end, and then I'll be glad to take questions. But again, the key takeaway is that I want to be the association that you call to help you with anything dealing with vertical aviation or the future dealing with helicopters. I'm using vertical aviation. Helicopters are not going away. We do about 44 different missions out there. If you get bored flying from runway to runway, there's plenty of missions to do in between with helicopters and vertical aviation of the future. And a lot of these future vehicles are going to be 3 to 5 missions that they pick up. Joby, Volocopter, Archer, Whisk, they're all members of VAI. They've been my members for about the last 2 years. And so we'll go through that. And I just want to I want to be a resource, an education resource for you as well. And anything that you want to do. And I told my staff, the reason I'm coming here is people that have 141 schools or schools out there, add a helicopter. And I think, as Bob Hepp is really good at how do you work the lines between the FAA and what's required and how do you get it done. I think adding an aircraft, adding a type aircraft would be a really good way to do, and we'd be glad to help with that because we do have the same issues. I mentioned we were Helicopter Association International, and the purpose of rebranding, a new color, new everything, is that we want to make sure that we are the one-stop for some of the vehicles I already talked about. Helicopters, vertical aviation, anything that doesn't need the infrastructure that airplanes need is what I try to motivate industry to, we are that association that tries to represent them. We bring all the educational stuff together. I know we have 2 very good CFI educational associations here. How many members do we have from SAFE? And NAFI. Thank you. I mean, I'm a member of both. I think I'm a lifetime member of both because I support the education of our flight instructors. That was a missing piece when I was in the FAA, and I'm glad that all of those came together. Continuing education is very important, and that's one of the things you'll see we just had a Heli Expo, the last Heli Expo, because next year it's going to be called Verticon, and it's going to be in Dallas. If you haven't been to one of those big shows, we had 60 helicopters inside the Anaheim Convention Center. 2 days to fly in, 2 days to fly out, 3 days on the floor. It's very exciting. It is the homecoming of helicopter and vertical aviation, and we had 15,000 folks attend. So I'm still on the rebound from that one. This is what we're doing as an association. Those are our strategic areas that we're trying to cover. Engagement, advocacy, working in DC, elevate safety, number 1, front and center. My big complaint as of the show we just had is that we didn't have the safety booth where la-di-da-di everybody saw it. Last time we were in Anaheim, we had the tragic accident of Kobe Bryant, and that happened 2 days before my show kicked off and 4 days after I took over as the CEO. And when all the reporters stormed the event, because it was a great opportunity to check on helicopters, the first thing they saw was that we were all about safety. We had over 100 safety and educational courses. And, that is our responsibility as an association. That is, to train and educate and provide those resources. So it actually was it could have been worse. But, get into really all those details of whether helicopters are safe, these vehicles are safe, aircraft are safe. The key is that aeronautical decision-making. The business operations, key thing of why I think everybody's here, right? To learn how to do the 141, how to be a good operator, how to not only train and do what our passion is and do it safely, but to make sure that we make money so we can survive the prosperity of the industry to keep things going. Workforce development, you guys are all surprised by that as well, right? So we all have the same thing. Unify the industry. That was part of this rebranding, is to get that unification. So we are now verticalaviation.org. Same if you remember us from before, we are still rotor.org, and we're going to go through that transition. Getting everybody engaged globally. So we're not only a U.S. association, but you'll see as we go through the slides, they actually represent more than just U.S. Advocacy, big. Make sure that, I think there's some other associations here as well, that anytime you need somebody else to weigh in on what you're trying to do for flight training, be it, Vertical Aviation International, we'd be glad to help step up and provide another signature, whatever it takes to try to get the folks that Roger was talking about in DC to do what we want them to do to help us, because we can give them the guidance and direction to go. One of the things, air tour management plans, you have airplanes there as well, but a lot of the folks around the United States don't understand that the national parks are trying to eliminate all overflight of both airplanes and helicopters in the tour industry. The tour industry is actually one of our pipelines for, because that's an operation that could, a young pilot can get out there and do 4 or 5 operations a day and build some experience before going out to do EMS to save people's lives at midnight on the side of a highway. So there is actually, part of the whole thing that, when you take out a chunk of the pipeline for educating pilots, we're going to have an issue. Community compatibility, we're talking about, the sound of helicopters, the sound of saving lives. It's a sound that that equipment makes while it's doing the work that it does. If there's vertiports out there, you can see the Indianapolis heliport behind me there. That heliport is right by the train station, by the bus station. It fits into exactly where, our government says we're going. So why would you close that down? You're never going to get that back. So if you know of infrastructure that's being closed down, of course, AOPA does a good job. We partner with them on the heliports, vertiports. We have to keep what we currently have open. What helicopters can use today, I'm trying to make sure Joby can use, Volocopter can use, and we don't have an agreement on that. We've pushed back on some of the stuff where they wanted vertiports and vertistops to be different from heliports. So we get into all that terminology too. It's challenging, but anything we have today that helicopters can use, we have not got authority to say that all these future vehicles can land at a heliport. Safety, we certainly have to try to figure out what we can do to help our members where they don't compete. We don't want members competing on safety. So if you see stuff that we do that it works for you, let me know. If there's stuff that you're doing that you think we should be doing, by all means, let me know as well. All right, so there's where I was going to talk about the harmonization, IFHA, which is the International Federation of Helicopter Associations. When I took over VAI, I didn't know that I also have that, and that enables me to actually have a seat at ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization in Montreal. And with that, we're able to basically got 192 countries that we try to harmonize on the vertical aviation. The reason I'm going to Montreal, and I went there last August, was the fact that the way the conversations happen for aviation up there is, and what about helicopters? Well, what about helicopters? So we're really trying to have a bigger presence there, and I'm trying to do what we can to get more representation on that. We talked about the workforce shortages, pilots, engineers, maintainers. I know some of the sub-meetings that are going on here, maintenance, how do we do that more efficiently? What are the areas, again, we don't compete in that we can actually get more efficiencies on? And environmental issues, I know some people came up this morning about the sound. We talk about the rulemaking that's going on. It was very interesting because you had Mosaic come out, and if you pay attention, you also had the SFAR come out because they're trying to certify these vehicles. And they were like, they came from 2 different mamas. I mean, the FAA on one hand was, hey, we want to do this. And on the powered lift side, it was totally the opposite. Like you can tell that, it's not one FAA that has an overarching guidance. Now, the good news is Michael Whittaker is in there now. But the bad news is as soon as he got in there, he got really preoccupied with Boeing and some of the political stuff. So right underneath him is Katie Thompson. Katie Thompson actually has our certificate. If you think about everything we do, she has the General Aviation certificate, and while he's doing more of the 121 stuff, or as the big boss and maybe a little more political. So we got her out to Heli Expo this year and tried to show her all the stuff that helicopters can do. Because the IFR training that you can do in a 172 and IMC conditions and all that, we still don't have it in any real training helicopters. And we still, our biggest accident killer is people flying VFR into IFR and or IMC, to be correct. And the issue is that, you know, there's a video out there, if you haven't, you can Google it, 56 seconds to live. And essentially, in a helicopter, if you're in a non-IFR equipped helicopter, you got 56 seconds from the time you punch in to the time you're dead. And, you know, so what we're really trying to do is, one of my big things is trying to get a trainer helicopter that's actually IFR certified, IMC capable, and actually start doing that type training. The technology is there. I mean, there's lots of technology that's out. Again, you get into the, you know, Redbird, ATD, all the good stuff, all the good work that's done here in the procedure-based training on why simulators and AATDs are so good. And then we got to get it in there and we got to get it through certification and then do the training. I mean, nothing like, and that's one of the things, if you look at the NTSB recommendation, you know, that all 135 should be IFR, should file an IFR flight plan and file, you know, fly IFR, which means you should be IMC capable. And that would help a whole lot. And again, that would have been an easy answer for Kobe Bryant still be with us today. So working together, you know, really leveraging the collaboration. Again, being here today, seeing everybody, talking all the flight issues. They're not, you know, what are all the common issues, right? 80% of the issues that Josh briefed yesterday is very relevant. You know, we're just another component of that type of what we need to do for our students. I talked about the Federation, and then now, you know, vertical aviation industry, access to some of the standards. To make sure that, you know, my job is, again, to look out 10 years. How do we set the environmental conditions so that you can succeed, so your flight schools can succeed, so we can keep training, that we actually have hangars to put helicopters and aircraft in, that it isn't, you know, the list at Amelia Island, where I'd like to finally coming up after failing twice at retirement. My next retirement I want to get right, and I want to retire at Amelia Island with my grandkids, and I can't get a hangar. You know, so park the aircraft. I got a Grumman Tiger as well as an R-44, and so I had to, you know, park the Grumman down there in the sun and start, you know, trying to meet everybody. Luckily, I met the president of the EAA chapter down there who knew a friend who had a off-airport hangar, so I got them in a hangar. But yeah, the battles of just having aviation facilities to allow you to succeed and start flight training are very difficult. So that's why we got band together. Wherever we can do, we need to work together. All right, this is still International Federation stuff. Those are some of the boards that actually work on stuff that's about 10 years out. And then the international community. Anything that you do that you think is difficult, you know, try to do it at the international level. When I got hired, I was told it used to be HAI, Vertical Aviation International, saying put the I in our association. So I did. And so the other thing we do now, not only being the largest vertical aviation show that again will be in Dallas next year in March, but now I partnered with the European Helicopter Association. We also do what's called Euro Rotors, which last year was in Madrid. This year's going to be Amsterdam. So we try to help on both sides of the Atlantic now. A lot of fun, a lot of interest. And again, same type stuff, just international, and really, really good to go. Business resources. That's why you're here, right? Same with us. You know, we set up a work group to, again, what don't we compete at? Me as an association, I don't know if there's any other associations here that might be able to help, but how do you help the one aircraft owner, or maybe even the Part 61 person that's out there training? What can I pick up? I mean, can I do administrative stuff? I'm really looking into how I can help the small, you know, all the money, where are you spending all the money that's not focused on growing your business? The administrative type stuff, maybe paperwork filing. You know, if there's grants you want to get. These are things I got my staff looking into. Can we help write 90% of the grants so that we do a lot of the heavy lifting, and then the members can actually take a benefit of that? Same thing with exemptions. That's kind of how we do exemptions with the FAA right now. Flight training and checking program is a very interesting one. And it's for helicopters right now, and the Helicopter Institute does that. It's kind of like almost like a self-examining authority that Bob was talking about, where Randy could actually he goes out and does 135 checks for other operators. And then the mill to sill, again, trying to figure out what are those pipelines to bringing the future into what we love part of the industry. pathway programs. The pathway program is essentially partnering with high schools. ALPA has a great model. And again, we don't try to reinvent the wheel. I look around to try to figure out who we can partner with that has a program out there. So if you have a program out there and it's all airplane, hey, let's get in touch and let's see if we can get some rotorcraft, vertical aviation tied into that as well. And then, of course, I do got to take some bragging rights of being the only one that has another aircraft on another outside of the Earth. And so that was unbelievable. I mean, I saw it up close, and then having it go to Mars and do all the missions it did, 72 missions. We were supposed to do about 5 and lasted a real long time. So good stuff on them. And then just aviation, overall, Sikorsky, 100 years they were celebrating this year as we were celebrating our 75th anniversary. And then, as I got up here and was thinking about, talking to the crowd here, and I was going back through the days, and I was like, interesting. Let me do this in reverse, since it might be fresh on everyone. Roger and I go back to about 2014, and, he was talking, I think when I was in Everett's position, down at DC, and he's telling me he's got this 141 with no time limits, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So I do consider Roger a mentor of mine as well, because that's exactly what I was, one of those ASIs that wanted to be mentored. I didn't come into the FAA and say industry doesn't know what they're doing. I'm the man, and we're gonna, you're gonna do what I want to do, because it cracks me up. Because that's why I went into leadership in the FAA. When every time you get a new POI and he goes, well, that's wrong. Well, I did it this way last time. Well, I'm the new POI, you got to do it this way. And you do go back to what you did before, right? So just crazy stuff like that, we really need to try to help stop. The CFI's check ride, I kind of talked you through that, but I do have to say with Bob's, when I was working for Bob's school, I was doing a stage check one time, and it was interesting because I took the student out there, he was almost ready, and so I took him out there and we went to Cumberland, and it was his navigational check prior to doing his next check ride. And I remember going over top of Cumberland, and I'm just looking at him, and he goes, okay, there it is. I'm like, we're not in a position to land. We're still at 3,000 feet. He never set up for landing at it. He just found it. It was kind of interesting. Like, a little work on the aeronautical decision making. We actually want to go and land at the airport, or are we just going to overfly them? So that was interesting. But definitely Bob was a great mentor as well. And like I said, he had a great team, and the way he developed his CFIs, and I did not know a CFI when I was working with Bob, and probably hopefully the same way, that was just building time. And certainly when I got to the FAI as an ASI and I was given CFI check rides, I could tell within the first 15, 20 minutes, how that check ride was going to go. If that person, that was there for the check ride was they check the block because I'm building time because I want to go to the airlines, or because he started off as a kid running around the grass strip, then he was pumping gas, and then they were really interested in flying, and it was a true love of him. But some of the things that happened, the flaming tomato stuff on check rides, I'm sure everybody in this room has some, if they're an evaluator, has some really good stories on the different things that happen. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Everett. Everett was up here this morning. Has Everett come back? Is he hanging out with the four-flight guy? I mean, what's going on? So he talked about the ATP coming to 800, and he talked about the ATD, Redbird, going to 200. Well, those two organizations, 800 has always been the general aviation part, and 200 has been the airline part. And so it really doesn't, I don't see any goodness coming to that. The ATP check ride, if you remember back before the Colgan accident, and I will say that I was the frontline manager that took over the Colgan account and put them out of business after the accident. Because some of the safety conversations I had with them, and that was kind of my stepping stone through the FAA. But the whole $1,500 rule got rid of ATPs being friendly, like ALPA used to always say, hey, get a new rating for your biannual flight review. What a great idea. I mean, I don't know, hopefully people are still doing that type of stuff, but you no longer can really do the ATP thing because you have to have a lot of other work that goes with it. So I don't see why that went to 800. I did talk a little bit about, my time as a senior FAA executive. Mike Whittaker, he got, when he was trying to get back in, which he now is the administrator, and I really do look for a lot of good things from him. He gave me the call one night and said, hey, I'm going to do this thing. What do you think about coming back to the FAA? I said, hey, Mike, I enjoyed my time there, but if you want to go to dinner anytime, I'd be glad to talk to you at dinner, but I ain't coming back. And I realized because, again, I feel that it had more of an impact on safety because their hands are tied so much. I mean, Everett and the folks you talk to and deal with are good, but you have to get people like, and that was the whole process of getting Katie Thompson, get senior leadership to come to your events, because if they come to the event, the purpose of that should be to fill the room with their people that work for them. And so when I had Katie Thompson in Anaheim, and I saw the huddle of FAA folks and she was talking to, that's the first time that they're actually meeting her. That's the first time that she's meeting them. I mean, so that's what I say as industry, drive the FAA in, get the leadership in there, the other folks will come, and then give them time to talk to each other and make an FAA-only meeting so that they can share the view of what they should be doing. The one thing that had made no progress while I was in the FAA I tried to do was Uber ASIs. So I agree on this centralization, especially with computers. I mean, we're still operating on some of the stuff at the FISDOs from the 50s. You know, there should be no reason. You need a check ride. It's almost like dial it in and who's the closest one and what's the location, and that should be the check ride. We shouldn't have these FISDOs in these areas that just want to protect their fiefdoms. And that still goes on today. And, the last time I was asking Pete Monday night, we were in and we saw David Bolcher, and he told us they were hiring 100 DPEs. I said, have you seen any? I mean, I don't know if anybody got better on the DPE thing. So there is, and then the battles of, Bob talking about self-examining authority. When I was trying to fix the DPE issue, and boy, that's when you figure out how big the bat that the DPEs have as well. The problem that doesn't want to be fixed versus how do we help keep students coming through. So those things are fun to work through. Gamma and AOPA gave a great rundown this morning. I'm very involved in Eagle. We got Eagle tomorrow that eliminate the lead and gas. So thank you, Elizabeth and Jens. ACS is not out there for helicopters or powered lift. We still don't even know how we're going to certify powered lift pilots. So we got the 609 from Leonardo. That's being made in Philly. And we have can't figure out who's going to fly that thing once they do get it certified, and it's been getting certified for over 10 years, so crazy. He also mentioned the SFAR 73. After much work, like 2 to 3 years of work on that, they decided to not change anything we're after, even though from 1978 is when it first went into effect, and all the things now are actually in all the handbooks, they're in the ACS. Everything that Robinson has in the SFAR 73 has been dealt with over the years. And the one key thing that one of the inspectors wanted to stick in that kept us from having a closed project there was that they didn't like the teeter-totter controls in the front and thought it was unsafe. So we're like totally divergent from what the issue is. And so to solve the problem, they decided to just put a 5-year expiration on it, and then we'll deal with all the same stuff that we were just dealing with them on. So yeah, those are some of the things that I think we're definitely lockstep in. Lots of good news as far as the market out there, and it fits into the same thing with the aircraft. Now is a good time to keep this push going, but we got to keep the stuff that happened during the pandemic of getting students to start flying. We keep that going now and right into 2024, 2025. Lots of new vehicles still coming out for us, still working, like I said, on the certification. There's a 609 down there from Leonardo. You've got a version of AAM up there from Airbus, City Airbus. Those are Enstrom was good. Enstrom did a comeback about 3 years ago now. China bought them. They went over to the Chinese, take what they can, and then bankrupt and come back, and they're doing a really good job right now. Robinson they changed leadership. Kurt Robinson has stepped down, and David Smith now is stepping up as the CEO of Robinson. If you didn't know that, happened last week. Sikorsky said 100 years, and MD Helicopters is back strong at the same deal. So 2 out of the 4 were bankrupt to get things cleaned up. Roadmap of advanced air mobility. Again, our job is to set that environment. Over the last 4 years, we've done 2 roadmaps here in the United States that we updated, and what those roadmaps are actually for is actually for Congress. So we meet with all the manufacturers that are developing these vehicles, and we come up with some common terms, and maybe we just came up with a 2-pager for Congress as we're going through the reauthorization of things that they need to do to enable us to succeed. And then we also partnered with the European Helicopter Association to see how that would work over in Europe with the EASA. So a little bit of a tweak on that. And now we're going to get some excitement, again, about helicopters, vertical aviation.
Carefully constructed models were used for all early experiments.
Today, a new vehicle, the helicopter, needs no landing fields, no right-of-way on land or water, as demonstrates tremendous usefulness in the humanity.
Gets its lift from the revolving blade. Needs no forward speed to sustain it in flight. Can fly at 0 miles per hour.
Maneuverable vehicles created by man.
There is no world without helicopters. There are just areas that nothing else can reach.
Just the ability to go anywhere, land anywhere, and do jobs that just no other aircraft can do.
Vertical lift creates capability and solutions that can't be replaced by other products.
Once you're on a site location, most of the cinema is happening from vertical takeoff.
The helicopter certainly allows us to do the job that we can do that no other piece of equipment allows us to.
Igor Sikorsky, he said if somebody needs help, an airplane can fly over and throw flowers. But it's the helicopter that can land, and they can save their life.
My first instinct is always to run outside, grab my phone and take a picture of it so that I can show my son, who's, he enjoys the magic of flight too.
Understanding how we each benefit each other is critical.
HAI, I think, is sort of the glue that holds us all together.
They've been doing it for 75 years. I don't know of any other organizations that is in a position to provide what they can.
I'm running an operation in Bali, Indonesia, on the other side of the world to what is happening mostly in America and Europe and everywhere else. And having that connectivity, having that connection with the global community where best practices, recommended practices, standards are formed and created to help us in this part of the world, I think is an invaluable part of HAI.
We need to maintain an understanding of where we've come from, what we've learned, and where we're going next.
HAI was supportive of welcoming new segments in aviation into the fold, helping support new industry segments.
I remember my first time flying in a helicopter and how excited I was. And so I can only imagine how a fifth grader would feel if her mother or grandmother was a pilot.
We continue to rely and depend on HAI for its advocacy, its safety programs, and for the continuous training that make our industry better.
I love that HAI, and specifically Jim Viola, has done so many things to help our companies. He's opened doors with the FAA, he's answered questions, been able to reach out to him anytime I need to, and I think Jim is just an amazing asset for HAI.
HAI has 75 years of experience in exactly the kind of support and advocacy that newer entrants into the vertical lift world are going to need.
So we have the benefit of all of the rotorcraft industry provided to us through HAI without the extraordinary cost of doing it on our own.
Global leader in the industry, supporting its members worldwide is huge. HAI works tirelessly on behalf of everyone, all the members, to make sure the vertical flight industry stays strong and viable.
I want to congratulate HAI on 75 years of outstanding service to our industry.
I want to especially thank its board and staff. Thank you, HAI.
I want to congratulate HAI on your 75 years and the many contributions that you've made to our industry.
Congratulations, 75 years is quite an achievement and we commend you. Thank you, HAI, for 75 years of service.
On behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff of the association, we are honored to be part of the history of vertical aviation.
Passengers and cargo one day soon may be brought directly into metropolitan areas, landing on top of buildings or in a space no more elaborate than the average automobile parking lot.
Aviation really is starting to bring in a lot of new technologies and a lot of new skill sets that maybe it hadn't before.
What type of tools and applications are going to be in place to allow air mobility and other aspects to integrate seamlessly?
Really going to go through a significant change in aviation.
In ways that we haven't thought of yet.
And work with the wider community to make sure that the future of vertical lift is as successful as the 75 years we've already seen.
So before I wrap up, I've got a little bit of notes here from yesterday. Again, the things that really stuck out and I want to stick to, first of all, I'll start with, Redbird and why we're here, because we all believe in training and we all believe in simulation as part of that great training. There is in the air is the worst training device possible. And being able to do it on the ground, be able to do all the emergency procedures is absolutely key. So again, I commend Redbird for all these technology that they've been doing, and it was really fun to be part of, not fun. But when they overturned that cart, I was in the FAA about, the whole 10 hours, 20 hours, all that stuff was just a nightmare to fix, so I'm glad it's a little stable right now. But Sam Graves is the senator that helped with the bill at the House, so he's the guy that really wanted to get that aviation in there, and he did, and he's got vertical aviation in there as well. But what came up yesterday was to kill our students safely. I mean, that's a phrase I'm going to use again, because that was really the hardest thing to justify. And it's always somewhere around 20 to 15% that we have fatal accidents with CFIs on board. Totally, there's no excuse. I mean, we have to have the procedures in place to know when to interrupt, when to take the controls, when to not allow the unintended result of what that lesson is. And if we have students that we're trying to get in and grow the industry, and they see that they're dying with CFIs on board, absolutely not going to work. So if there's one area to target as we walk out of here, is to make sure we don't kill any students. I mean, there's the big thing of, no fatal accidents. Yeah, that's hard. And when that came out in the U.S. helicopter safety team, people are like, well, you can't achieve it. I'm like, okay, which of your relatives do you think shouldn't come home tonight? We have to try to achieve it. But if we just start right now, moving forward with let's not kill any students, that alone, we could raise that bar, and we don't need regulators to do something to try to fix CFI stuff. I mean, and I'm not sure what the supporters are in here, but anywhere from some people want to double the hours required to be a CFI. And that was something I always stopped when I had the position to stop it, because it is about the quality of the individual, about the quality of the training, and it's not just about burning hours. So then let's see what else. Charlie Precourt, he is amazing. Law of primacy. When I take somebody flying in a helicopter, and a lot of people, because of my position, because of my background, they'll say, I won't put my wife in a helicopter, but I want like you to give her a ride. I try to bore the heck out of them. It's not about something exciting. If you want to go to exciting, go to Disney World, Disneyland. When we're doing aviation, unless I go, if I want to do something, I'll go down and see Patty Wagstaff, and we'll do some exciting things, right? I mean, so don't try to excite somebody. Especially the other thing I hear a lot, just to pass on, is that when someone says I took one flight lesson and I and I never went back. Why is that? I go, well, when did you take the flight lesson? Was it in the afternoon? Yeah. Where was it in the afternoon? I mean, really, so if you're introducing somebody into aviation, when's the best time to fly? It's always in the morning, right? So if you've got someone that you really think is interested, start them off in the best conditions, in the, you know, with not that aircraft that Roger was showing today that he can sing that song to, but you know, get them a good intro and get them started on the right foot. So questions for me, you know, well, number one, I'm passionate. I think you probably know that. Number two, I love helicopters, love vertical aviation. I'm really excited about, you know, I've been there 4 years now, and hopefully, you know, I'll do another 4 years. But it's about working together. We have a great relationship with all the other folks in DC. Anything for me? You know, reach out to me if you want. If you don't have a helicopter and you want to add a helicopter, and we'll help do that.
Hi, Jim. I think, unfortunately, we're running right at the end of our time. So if you have any questions, you can find him. I'm sure he'll be around. But we're moving into our afternoon breakout sessions now. The breakouts will start shortly. Thank you.